just lost it. I didn't bring no child into this world for some grown man to beat. It just don't work. That was it. I took a gun and shot him.
My name is Barbara Calmes, and this is a story about my dad and an angel named Rose. And this story takes place in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, Stick Ross Mountain, and he lives quite a ways out in the woods. During this time, his health was really failing, and I didn't know how long he'd stay in his house. And the house across the street sold to a lady that I had been praying for, that someone would be able to help him. She came over, and had come to see my dad. And she was checking me out because she wasn't sure who was coming to see my dad. She was really on guard. And that was the time I realized that she was a little rough, but I kind of liked that because she was really on guard for my dad. Right off, I could tell she had a good heart.
I met Virgil when we bought this house over on 790 Road. Virgil had been sending messages over to me by my husband to come take care of him. And I would just ignore it because I wasn't trying to work. And Jerry came over one day and asked me to come over and talk to him. So I went over and talked to him, and he said his dad wanted me to ask him to start coming over and taking care of him. So I went in and met his dad and seen what a little sweetheart he was. And I said, yeah, I will, because he's right here. You never left his house without praying, just never. And I just loved that about him. I took care of Virgil for years. It was just him and that little dog before I came along. As time grew, I would read to him every day, either from the Bible or Virgil's daughter bought us a devotional, and I read to him out of that every day.
When my dad had to go to the hospital and he was real sick, she came to see him every day. And we wondered, this lady that's just a neighbor has taken a lot of time and interest in my dad. He really got really bad where he couldn't take care of himself, and so we brought him to my house and took care of him for quite a while, but he kept wanting to go back home. And so that's when we asked Rose to really help him more. I didn't have a clue of what she was wanting to tell me, but she sounded so desperately needing to tell me in person. She told me she was in prison, and I told her, well, Rose, I knew that all the time. So did Dad and Jerry. And she said, you're kidding. They knew it too? I said, yes. Every day I was thinking she must have thought, one of these days they're going to find out I've been in prison, and I just love them and I don't want them to know. I didn't know why she was in prison, but I knew whatever had happened to her, she was a transformed person, because when I got to know her, she wasn't a person that should have been in prison, because she had a big heart, and whatever happened wasn't my concern. But we did know that she had proved to us that she was trustworthy and loving to my dad.
I was in prison for 32 years, and I really can't tell you how many times I've been up for parole, maybe 10 times. And it just wasn't working. Evening before, I had two little boys, and one was not his, it was his stepson. And I had put them to bed, and then they were in there playing, and I would go in there and tell them, now y'all quit playing, go to sleep. Well, children know how far they can push their mom, and they go right back to where they're doing. And he goes in there, and they're quiet for the rest of the night. The next morning, I get up, he gets up, he goes to work, and then I get up, and my children get up, and the whole side of my baby's head is black. And I said, who did that to you? Daddy? I just lost it. I didn't bring no child into this world for some grown man to beat. It just don't work. That was it. I took a gun and shot him. My mind wasn't my mind wasn't saying kill him. My mind was just saying defend your child. And in one shot, it killed him. I hit him right in the heart. I don't know if I had to go back to that. I don't think it would be any different. I'd still defend my child. When I went up for parole, I had a protester. His name's Bob John. He was the brother of the husband that I killed. And he had protested me every single time I come up for parole. And I don't blame him in the least. If somebody would have murdered one of my siblings, I would have probably protested too during that time. I wouldn't now because I have a forgiving heart, but back then I wouldn't have forgave him. Brad Henry called the prison and told him when I got out to make sure I didn't stay in Oklahoma City because that was the most vengeful protester he had ever met. The final time I went up for parole, I still didn't really know that I was going to make it, but I had a calm about it. It was just an inner peace, kind of like I knew everything was going to be okay. And you meet the parole board. At this time, they had gone to meeting by satellite. They let you know after they're through talking to you, they take a vote and they let you know whether we've decided for you or against you. And they told me that they had decided to give me parole. And then when it went to Brad Henry, he decided to send it back to them with the suggestion that they cut my time and release me. And that's what they did. The day I got out, I didn't know the name of the people that had wrote the letter. I knew somebody had wrote a letter for me. Pat Boatwright told me it was friends of hers that went to church, and she had told me their names, but I didn't remember the names. And then one day I woke up, it was 4 or 5 years later, I woke up, I had been praying the whole time since the time I got out that I wanted to meet these people. And it was 4 or 5 years later, I woke up one morning, went in, sat down on the sofa, and I just hear Barbara and Paul Calmese. That's when I jumped up and got my phone book and called Pat, and she said, it was Barbara and Paul Calmese. My reaction to finding out that Barbara and Paul were the people that had wrote the letter to the parole board was just like total shock, because here I've known them for a year, and then to just up and have the Lord tell you, it's Barbara and Paul. You've already met them.
Never really thought about it. That's the way I am. I just didn't. It was just, I just fell in love with her and didn't even think about it. I worked with this lady, and she asked me if I would write 2 letters to 2 different women, or get the governor to write the letters, but I had to write the governor to do this. And so I did. And she didn't really tell me much about the ladies, except I had faith in Pat that these ladies needed some kind of attention because of their sentence. And this whole time, here was my angel that I'd prayed for, helping my dad. And here we were, the ones that helped her.
After I found out it was Paul and Barbara that wrote the letter, I was ecstatic. They were ecstatic because we talked on the phone. And then when I saw them the next time, we just hugged and everything and sat and talked about all the miraculous things the Lord had done, how no man could plan that. No man could have done it. I don't care how smart a man is, no man could have worked out all the details just the way it went. There's no way. I think the reason that we went a year without realizing who one another was because the Lord didn't want no deal in there. I helped you, so now you help me. He didn't want that to exist. I took care of him until the day he died, and it was just maybe 2 weeks before he died before we discovered who one another was. When Virgil found out about Barbara and Paul being the one that wrote the letter, it wasn't too big of a surprise to him because he walked so close with the Lord. I mean, he had a relationship with the Lord that most people don't have. And it was like, well, the Lord did it again. Yeah, there are people that say that God doesn't count when you're in prison, but for me, it's the Lord is everything. He was everything there. He brought me through. He brought me out of a pit that I thought I would never come out of. And I don't know, he's had a calling on my life since I was 8 years old. But when I went to prison, because I had just gone my own way, and when I went to prison and he got a hold of me, my life has been awesome since. And I know he's there with me every step of the way. And that's one thing I hang on to.
Because of the grace that Rose received, her new life gave my dad a new life.